we're gonna still have to do this virtually. Unfortunately, I wish that we could all get together and have some food and have get back to normal. But until we get through this, this is kind of the way of the world, I guess. But I reached out to Sydney and Bethany and the board, I guess, and they decided that they were willing to go ahead and take a look at Twinmotion, which is a visualization tool developed by Epic Games and Unreal Engine. They are the developers of Fortnite, and they have a huge presence in the video gaming world. And they're getting into the AEC workspace because the software seems to be, it's already there. They just had to bridge the gap a little bit. I'll let Dean get into that. But so today we have Dean, and Dean, I'm sorry, is it meow?
It's meow like a cat. It makes it easy for you.
Okay. All right. So Dean's going to be presenting Twinmotion today. Hopefully we can get the chat going, and if anybody has any questions, again, Dean, I'd like to have sort of an open session. Obviously, if you were face to face with us, we would be, able to ask questions and whatnot. So we like to keep that same kind of looseness to the group.
No, absolutely.
And so I'm excited about this product, everyone. We just partnered with this company, and right now Imagine It is the only reseller for Twinmotion. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Dean, and he can show you Twinmotion.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I get started, again, I know it's redundant, but you can see my screen, right? It's the Charlottesville Revit users group for those who are unmuted. Yep. Okay, cool. Perfect.
Yes.
So thank you for having me. My name is Dean Meow. Oh goodness, come on. So we're going to introduce Twinmotion for you today. But a little bit about me. So this is me. I'm actually out of San Francisco, California area. So it's a bit earlier for me. A little bit about me. Some of the things I like to do beyond work is I continue to coach hockey. There's my young son there, so I do things beyond work. Some of the things about Twinmotion. What is Twinmotion? So as Matt said, it's a visualization platform for AC professionals. Some of the compelling qualities of Twinmotion are its speed and ease of use without sacrificing image quality. It's a tremendous communication tool that provides various forms of media export, from images, panoramas, videos, a VR interface, and a tool called Presenter out of Twinmotion, which packages the model into an executable file and can be used and shared with others. The product is also already feature rich, but it's ever evolving. So there's a lot of upgrades that are continually being done on the upgrade roadmap. Also, Twinmotion allows for asset content flexibility and expansion. The asset library that's already in Twinmotion is relatively substantial, but you're not limited to that, just the ones that are included. You can import and expand the library with a variety of other web-based resources to fulfill your asset library. And finally, Twinmotion is actually quite fun to use. Once you start getting into it, you're going to find yourself experimenting with a lot of different features because of its easy use. So once I get into it, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. So again, this is relatively a formal presentation, but since we have an open mic, please stop at any time, and we have the time so we can make this a little more interactive as a demonstration. So before I actually start doing the demonstration, let me show you a quick video that our team put together that kind of encapsulates a lot of the features that are packed inside of Twinmotion. So this is the data set that I'm going to use as a backdrop for the presentation. So again, very easy to use. We can have animated characters here. There's an extensive library of characters, not just people, but animals and a variety of other animated features in there. Camera capabilities, pretty standard, panning, zooming. We have time of day settings where we can go from day to night. There's a lot of lighting features here. You can see in a parking lot and around the building. There's a lot of lighting objects that are included with the package. Some of the fun things you can see here is this, as we pan, we have what's called the northing offset. So you can change the northing offset and kind of animate the moon and sun going across the sky, things like that. And as we kind of translate here and move into the interior of the building, you'll see that there are other features here like particle animation. So you can add smoke to this burning laptop. There's water. We have character paths, so we can add paths for not only just characters, but vehicles and custom paths. We can integrate videos within the video. So another neat feature there. And there are camera features here, though, like depth of field, where we can kind of change the focal point, open up the iris. You can kind of focus in on different things. And then, as I talked about earlier, there's vehicle paths there. You can create your own custom paths, change the seasons from summer, fall to winter. And then we can adjust weather from a stormy, rainy day to a snowy blizzard day. And as things get snowy, cars accumulate snow. There we can show the age and growth of plants and such on the site. Night scenes. Again, there's some more characters in there with flying birds. Nighttime scene with lights. So again, this is just kind of give you a broad stroke view of what we can do inside of Twinmotion. So let me get out of this PowerPoint for a moment. And let's start from the beginning of opening up a Revit file. So this is a Revit users group, so you guys are all familiar with Revit. So I have the model that we're using as the backdrop for the Twinmotion presentation. So again, you get to see it's a pretty basic model there. It's fairly well vetted out with interior information, building skin, and a little bit of a simple site here. But the way in which we were able to get and extract this data out of Revit and bring it into Twinmotion is using a plugin from Twinmotion. So if you look on the top here with your tabs, there's a Twinmotion plugin for the various versions. I happen to be using 2020. I don't know how far back they go to 18, I believe, 19, 20, and then there's a 21 version of the plugin. But a very simple interface. So there are 3 panel buttons here. So there's a See in Twinmotion, which is basically a direct link to Twinmotion. So I can quickly take this model here and export it right into Twinmotion very quickly. The difference between that and doing a hard export to an FBX file, which is this button here, is that it's a one-directional kind of way of looking at your model and vetting it out inside of Twinmotion to kind of get a sense of what your model might look like. So what I mean by that is that I can be in Revit, I can export this out into the See in Twinmotion, look at the model and the various views inside of Twinmotion, and then make some adjustments right back into Revit, and then re-export it back to Twinmotion. So the only thing about that is that it is not a bi-directional change. Hang on one second, let me ask you about this. It's one directional. It's from Revit into Twinmotion. It's not things that you're going to be doing in Twinmotion by adding objects and assets and then bringing it back into Revit. So just wanted to make that clear. Some of the settings here, so I don't want to get too deep in here, but there are certain things that you can do in here on how you can export the model when you're doing the See in Twinmotion. So there's the no merge, there's by family, by material. So there's just a few settings there. And then truly the best way to get your model into Twinmotion is to do the Twinmotion export to an FBX file. Again, you have some control over how you can export it here, just like you do in the settings panel. And I'll show you that in a minute. So once you kind of decide how you want to break the model up, just go ahead and export that, and then we can bring that right into Twinmotion. So that's essentially how difficult it is for you to get your Revit model from here into Twinmotion. So let me go ahead and open up Twinmotion and show you how that all kind of comes together here.
Good question for you.
Yes.
With the, this is Robert Glover Barton. With the FBX export, if I have one from another program, specifically I'm thinking of Drone Deploy will export out FBXs, can I import that into Twinmotion? I understand I'm probably jumping ahead,
yep.
But.
No, absolutely. Yeah, any FBX format is fine. And that's where I was talking about earlier, where you can bring in a lot of content from other resources. So if the material library, if you're wanting to add certain assets and objects and materials, you can certainly bring those in via FBX. And again, that's probably the cleanest method. So, realizing that, out of Revit, you can do a quick export out to FBX, but it doesn't really give you kind of the broad spectrum of what you can do with the true export out of the Twinmotion plugin. So you can actually bring this in or export this FBX file right out of Revit and bring that into Twinmotion. It will behave, more or less similar to the export out of Twinmotion, but it's just not as rich. But to answer your question, yes, you can bring in any FBX file into Twinmotion. So upon deployment of Twinmotion, you're going to be presented with this welcome screen. Just kind of gives you a quick broad stroke about how you can navigate around Twinmotion. You can change your navigation mode to mimic these other applications if you prefer to navigate like the Revit interface. You can do that, or just keep it at Twinmotion. Very quickly, there's the link right here to go to the Twinmotion Epic Game website, so you can download those plugins. So it's right here up front. Sometimes I'd caution about getting rid of this, because if you had set it to Revit and then you wanted to go back to Twinmotion, if you kill this, I think you got to reinstall the program, so it's a little annoying, but just a little tip there. So move that out of the way.
I'm sorry, this is Jason Harwell. I don't mean to interrupt. Can you repeat
that
last little part there?
Yeah,
about setting the controls for SketchUp versus Twinmotion?
Yeah, so on the welcome screen, there's the ability to change your navigation mode to mimic like Revit or SketchUp or whatever it might be. But if you kill the box and say I don't want this box to pop up anymore, it'll stick on that format. It's not a game changer killer, but if you prefer to go back to the other navigation mode, you're kind of stuck in there. You probably have to reinstall the program.
You can't adjust that from preferences anywhere.
I haven't found that out. I could be mistaken, but I'll shelve that for the time being. There probably is a way to get around that.
Okay,
but I generally just keep that there. It's just a quick X out of it. So
thanks.
Yeah. In any event, so this is Twinmotion out of the box. So you have this viewport here, and you can kind of tumble around, and you can see that by default we have this default ground material here. We have this scene in the background that just kind of goes out into space. I'll show you as we get in the demo how we can manipulate and change these. But this is just the viewport that you'll be working in. On either side of the viewport, you have these menu columns here. So on the left-hand side here, you have your asset and object library. We'll be poking in here throughout the demonstration, but this is where all your information is for your materials and your various objects that you're going to be placing into your model. And again, these are collapsible if you want to have a bigger viewport. On the right-hand side, you have what's called a scene graph. The scene graph is more or less equivalent to how you're going to manage your model, like object styles or levels or layers in CAD. So it's a good way so that you can organize your model through this scene graph and turn things on and off. You can navigate to certain things inside the model through the scene graph. So very helpful, very useful. You're going to see that through the demonstration. This is something I'm using all the time. And then there's ways of searching inside of it, and you can kind of filter by certain categories inside of here. You have this little eyeball. This is always available to you in your viewport, and it allows you to do certain things like changing time of day. You can see how I can change the time of day here. There's a speedometer here. This is for actually navigating around your model that basically has 3 speeds, 1, 2, and 3. 1 is walking, 2 is like a bicycle, and 3 is simulating basically like a vehicle or car speed. Yeah, you can have other things like looking at things in plan view or front view, side view, whatever it may be. And then you have a quick access into the VR mode. So this is immediate. So if you have VR tools, you can put on your headset and you can start looking around the model that quickly. So it's already built into the Twinmotion model here. So that's kind of the interface here. And then again, at the bottom, there's this menu dock that has a variety of other tools and menu items that we'll be navigating through as we start looking at our model. So that's the interface. So let me bring in a model that was exported out of Revit. So basically just this menu item here with this arrow, so import. So I'm going to import, just like any other software product, there's a variety of ways of importing. You can go to this main menu here. You can go to this hamburger menu. You can do an import here. You can go to File, Import. So again, like Revit, CAD, anything, there's multiple ways of importing and doing similar functions. So let me go ahead and import that file. So I'll bring in that community center. So when you bring in the file, you can bring in geometry or landscape. I'm bringing in the geometry of that community center that we were looking at. Under the options, as I talked about earlier, you can bring in the model in a couple different ways. One way is to keep the hierarchy of the model. It's broken up by all the various objects that were developed inside of Revit. You can collapse it by material or organize it by material. We like to use collapse. Or collapse all, which basically what it does is just makes it one ginormous model, so you really can't segregate out or pick certain things out of the model. So it's just one big, huge model that you can render it and do things with it, but you can't manipulate individual objects inside the model. So I'm going to keep the hierarchy. This fixed UV is just basically allowing you to keep the mapping of the materials that were coming from the other products. The up axis. Typically Z is up, but I know that there are other up products like Maya that I think up is Y. So depending on what product that you're importing it from, you can adjust what the up axis might be. So I'll just go ahead and import that. Just take a minute. While we have a second here, any questions? No? Okay. So models brought into Twinmotion, you can kind of see it's pretty generic. I don't see my model right away, but as I was talking about earlier, I have this scene graph, and you can see it's really quite extensive because it's broken down the model into all the various objects that were developed inside the Revit model. But one of the easiest ways for you to navigate inside your Twinmotion model is to use the scene graph. So if I want to find my model, I can just select the community center as the parent, hit my F key, and it takes me right to the model. So I'm not kind of floundering around the viewport trying to find my object. So I can quickly get into my model and kind of look at it. So if you look at it here, it's relatively raw. There's not a whole lot going on. The materials are pretty poor, but we'll get into those in just a minute. But navigating around the model is quite simple. I'm just holding my middle mouse button to kind of pan around. I can use my wheel to zoom in. I can hold on my shift and just kind of orbit around things. And again, I can start, zooming in, or I can hit my arrow and start walking inside the model here a little bit and going around things. And like I say, I actually wanted to go to a specific area in this model, but I could try to navigate through this and try to find it. But again, the easiest way for me to do this is to use my scene graph. So I know that there's a billiards table that I want to go to. So if I just use my search and type in bill and select that, hit my F key, it takes me right to that location that I want to be in. So pretty easy. Again, I really like this scene graph because it allows me to navigate around my model quite easily.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very, very easy to use. I mean, you don't even really need to know what the object is. If I just click on it, it'll tell me inside my scene graph, it's this 20-foot column, and I can turn that off right here. So again, it's just like object styles or layers. You can turn things on and off, but it's also a quick way to navigate inside your model, move to certain things. So now that I'm on the interior, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, so that kind of screen grab you were calling it. So does that work in a hierarchy, and where's it pulling that information? Is it the Revit category, Revit type, and then family, and then instance?
Yes.
Okay.
So these are all the
various.
So
it's working exactly the same as Navisworks.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's good and bad in that it's very deep because there's a lot of stuff in here. But the good news is that I can search, or I can look at things by various categories here. And I'll show you this as we're going deeper into the demo, how easy. It doesn't matter where I'm at in my scene graph. I can always find stuff.
Yeah, the search is critical and great.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
This is wonderful. I'm using it all the time. So yeah, it'll make more sense as I start moving along in here a little bit further. So I'm inside the scene here, and one of the first things I want to do is show you how to kind of manipulate and change materials. So you can see that the materials that are brought in from Revit, they're okay. They're not terrible, but I would like to change them, especially this window. So if I hit my little eyedropper here, it's my material picker, and I click on it, it tells me it's this glass, cast gray, and it tells me certain parameters about it. I can change its color, its reflectivity, its scale, and so on. But I don't want that. So I'm going to go to my materials library and select a different kind of glass. So this is the default library that comes inside of Twinmotion. Again, you're not married to this. You can add to this and manipulate any one of these materials on your own. But out of the box, it's quite extensive and it's pretty deep. So you can see all the various glass types that are in here. A lot of them have little bump maps on them, and some are shaded and such. But I'm going to try to find this tinted, dark tinted glass. So I'm going to select that one and just kind of drag it on top of that material. So it's that easy for me to change that material from that gray to now a little bit better. It's an actual glass. So now that it's on my windows here, I have the control over changing it. So maybe I want it a little bit darker and a little more opaque. You can change that. Again, there's certain things here. This weather one's kind of cool because it'll show like raindrops on your window if you have weather on. You can turn that off. I'll show you weather when we go on the outside a little bit further. So again, very easy to add materials to the window there. So if I look and kind of pan over here to this wall here, and again, this is the Revit material that was applied. It's not terribly bad, but I think we can do better. You can see that it's pretty flat. It doesn't show any kind of bumping material. So let's go ahead and change that. So let me again use my material picker, select on the material, and again it tells me it's this stone natural soldier. Let me go back and find a different stone. Again, pretty extensive library of stuff here. So maybe, I don't know, maybe this one. I'll drag that on. So I put that stone on here. If you look at it, it's a little nicer now. Now I can see the relief in the grout there from the stone. It's a little nicer. You can change the scale here, make it bigger, make it smaller. Again, quite simple. Just dragging that material onto that onto that surface makes it that easy. But one of the things that I really like about Twinmotion is that I can isolate the application of the material, even though this is one common type of wall type. I know that a lot of times you're kind of stuck with, applying a material to a certain wall type because it is categorized by that. But I can isolate a piece of that wall by using apply to object. So if I want to change a piece of that wall to something else, let me find a different wall covering, maybe this plaster coating. I can just drag it onto that one wall now. So now it's not changing the material for all the objects that are the same type. I can isolate that one wall and place that wall material just on this one wall here. So I find that to be quite useful because I know previously on using some apps, you're always having to change its layer, its object style, and it becomes a little bit of annoying to kind of isolate certain things when it's just easy right here. I can just pick that object and change it and make it different than the rest of them. So pretty easy here. Some of the other things that we can do about materials inside of Twinmotion, again, you can manipulate its color. Maybe I want this to be a little bit darker, stuff like that. Change its reflectivity, get its scale. I can make it a little bit bigger in the bump map. But one of the fun things that Twinmotion provides is this concept of grunge. So if I go to more, you can see this grunge tool here. So what you do is as I move my grunge up, you can start seeing that the material starts to weather or look a little bit older. So you can add a little bit more realism to your materials by saying, well, in 10 years, kind of what this is going to look like. And these are kinds of things that you can animate too. So you can show, I don't know, how this might look in X amount of years, the weathering of this particular material. So it's just kind of a neat, fun tool to have there for your materials. So now that we have some materials applied, you kind of get the idea there. It's pretty simple. I can start building out this environment a little bit deeper. So if I go into my library, oh, go ahead.
It looks like it wrapped around the corner a little bit. Is that something you can control?
Right here, this corner here. Well, it just happens to be that that's just the extent of that object there. It's kind of this thick object. I could put the same material on this wall and it will kind of blend. Is that what you're asking? I can't control.
It should depend on the way the object is joined in Revit. So if you did a miter join there.
Right. So this happens to be just kind of a butt joint there. So yeah, it's just based on the geometry. So you're correct.
Can you talk a little bit about the opacity mask feature right there, and maybe you don't necessarily have to demo it, but just talk a little bit about how that works. What we would see is that if I'm not mistaken, another image that would be mapped on top of it that we can set the opacity of, or
Yeah,
another
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then I can show you that there are some other tools in here where you can kind of set the sort and place things on top of one another. I'll show you that in just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, absolutely. But before I get to that, I just wanted to build this scene out a little bit further, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So if we go back to the library, I talked about, characters. So there's a fairly extensive character library here. So we have animated humans, we got groups of people, we got, kind of posed humans, which are basically like RCP people that are kind of two-dimensional. And we have animals and some cutouts as well. So in the animated human library, there's, a plethora of different people here that you can select and choose. So if I want to just build out my scene here, I just grab Emily here and I can drop her into the scene. And when she's in the scene, you have this little gizmo here that's attached to her, so I can kind of grab her and rotate her around. Maybe I want to move her over a little bit. And they are animated, so I can change her from an idle to maybe drinking, maybe phoning, something like that. So there are a variety of things that you can do with each one of these people, and they're all kind of random. So I'm gonna leave Emily here for now. Move her out of the way. So not only can you have individuals, you can start populating with a variety of different individual people here. I can put in groups of people as well. So if I just grab these group of 3 here, and I drag them in, I'll put that group here, maybe rotate them a little bit. So you can see that I have this group of 3. So if I grab another group of 3 and place them in here, you can see that it randomizes it. So it's not the same group of 3. So which is a nice feature, because you don't want you obviously don't want the same group of 3 people that are in your scene all the time. So every time you're grabbing a variety of these different groups, it's going to randomize them and put a bunch of different people in your scene for you. So pretty simple to kind of build out your scene here by grabbing these various types of groups and people. Not only do you have people, but we have animals. I like Felix because I'm a cat person, so I'm gonna put Felix underneath the pool table. We have, we got dogs and chickens and all kinds of crazy stuff out here. Put a dog in here. Maybe there's an office dog. Move him out of the way. So again, there's, like I said earlier, the product is very fun to use. There's a lot of interesting things that you can do to build out your scene. There's butterflies. And I showed you on the video. There's birds flying in the sky. There's fish that you can add to a pond or water if you need to. So a lot of fun features here. With that, I talked about earlier that how you can kind of mask things on one another. So Twinmotion has these decals, and I'll show you how to do some of these things on the outside, but I'll grab some of these fun ones here. So maybe I'll put this Hopscotch decal on the floor here. Just like a material, I can change its size. I can change its opacity. Maybe it's, maybe you can see through it, right? So there's things you can do about that. This sort order, this will come in handy when I put something outside. I'll show you how that works, but it's basically laying one on top of one another. So you can sort them by what's the priority on top of one another. I can also grab maybe this graffiti here. And again, as I'm hovering over any of these surfaces, you can see that it places it out there for you.
A question about the decals?
Yeah.
Do those only apply to flat surfaces?
Nope. I can put it around that round column. I mean, it kind of truncates it a little bit, but it doesn't have to be flat. Yeah, I mean, it does a little strange thing here. It just kind of, it didn't wrap it really. It just kind of placed it on that base of that round surface there.
It looks like it's on per polygon or per face.
Yeah, it's kind of a yes/no answer. So decals are very handy because they, rather than build out a lot of, I'll show you in a parking lot, you can do the parking like striping. You could do that in Revit. You can do it here as well. Really depends on how you want to, manage, your model and how you want to animate that. So decals, pretty simple. Just again, you can control them just like any other object or a material, changing its opacity. You can layer them on top of one another. You can put one on top of one another, and again, you can change its sort order.
Do all of these things that you're adding, like decals and character animations, do they show up in your search, or what did you call this thing on the right here?
Yeah. So if I go to decals, as I place them out there, it'll tell me that I'm now I can manipulate my hopscotch. Yeah. So anything that I add as an asset to my scene, it adds it to my scene graph. And so this is how I can actually just turn these things off. It can be placed there, but I can turn it off and on. So it's easy to kind of manage those objects inside of Twinmotion.
And how do we adjust the layer stack of those decals again?
I'm sorry, say that again?
How do we adjust the stacking order of those decals again?
Yes. So in like this hopscotch, there's a sort order. So if I'll show you when I go outside. I'm going to place some things outside, and I'll show you how that lays on top of one another. Mm-hmm. Here I can do it right here. So I'm going to grab this pavement, this funky colored pavement. You can see that it's below the hopscotch detail, but if I change its sort order to 1, it moves it on top.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can change that sort order.
Great.
So, yeah. Pretty. Oh shoot! I didn't mean to do that. Deleted my floor. Maybe it's better to do it here. Delete. See how easy that scene graph comes in handy? And by the way, there is an undo, so you can undo if you did something by mistake, like I did by deleting the floor.
Oh, sorry. How many steps of undo do we get by default? And can that be
gosh, boy, I think it's to your last save.
Okay.
So if I save this now, it's gonna kind of refresh it all. Okay. So moving along here. So we have objects, we have decals, we have people, we have animals. We can also add other things here. Let's go to, maybe I can put a laptop out here. In the video you saw that. So we have a laptop here. There are things like I showed you in the video that there are particles. So there's a variety of different things here. There's fire and smoke. You can put this smoke on this laptop so it's kind of burning. So there's a lot of particle kind of animations. There's water, there's colored smoke. Additionally, there's sound. So you can add people sound. Like this is, you can't hear it here, but you can add certain kinds of sound. Noises like these people are kind of conversing, so sort of like white noise in the background. So you can add a lot of texture to your presentation. So that smoke is a particle, so that's a little annoying for me right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn it off. Going back to some of the other objects that we can add in here. Let me go to Office and maybe some tables. So I can grab this table, I can bring it in. So again, it's very easy. I mean, it's just drag and drop into your scene, very simple. Maybe I want to add a chair. So I grab this chair, drag it in here. In order for me to copy something, or again, I have the gizmo, again, I can rotate, move it to make a copy. I mean, I could certainly drop another chair in here, but I can copy this by holding my shift key down and dragging over. So now I have an instance or a copy of it. Some of the other things that you can do with these objects is you can move things, you can scale, you can rotate by using these commands here rather than the gizmo. Additionally, there are things, if you need to do something very precise, you can transform things. So if I click, let me get out of this and go to all. So if I click on this chair, so there are certain things about its position that it's telling me. So if I wanted to precisely move something about this chair, maybe move that to 17, you can start nudging the object a little bit more precisely than eyeballing it here, if that makes sense. So you have the ability to do some precision transforming of objects inside your model by using these tools here. So again, you can rotate and scale it here. They are the same features as here, and you can tumble through these by hitting your tab key. So if I'm hitting my tab key, I can tumble through these commands here. So pretty simple there. Let's move on to some other things inside of Twinmotion. We have lighting. So in lighting, these are all these IES light types. Again, you can add whatever additional light types that you want, but I'm going to just grab one of these. I don't know, maybe this one. So I'm going to just put it up here. And once it's placed, you have the ability to change its angle. Maybe I want it to be a little more focused. Change its attenuation. Something like that. I don't know. Change its intensity. Move this a little bit over here so it's on the pool table. You can kind of see that shining here. What really makes this kind of come to life a little bit better is if I go to my little eyeball, I can again change the time of day, maybe make this night. And I can see that light kind of coming alive there a little bit. It's incredibly intense, but you can kind of see how that adds a little bit more texture to your scene. I can add another one here. Change its angle and its attenuation, maybe something like that. Right now I have the shadows off, but I can turn the shadows on. Just kind of see the shadows now. If I go back to my lighting again, this is how I can kind of filter what I want to see. You can see that the gizmo for this light is highlighted, but I can go back to the other one. And again, I can change and turn its shadow on. So again, I have controls over here. So by the way, these gizmos, these helpers, gizmo helpers are important in order for you to obviously to manipulate and move the objects. I personally, when I'm working in my scene, I don't like to see them, but I know that I can always go back to them by just clicking on it and it highlights that object for me. But if you always like to have them on, you can go to your preferences and go to appearance, and they're called visual helpers. So if I click on this and have visual helpers always on, they're always going to be on in your scene. Certainly it's a personal preference, but you know, if you like to have them on at all times, you can. They don't render, but it's just they're there for you so that when you're wanting to manipulate and edit these things, they're always here. For me, I just like to have them off because I know that I can always go back to them from my scene graph. Another way to get them back on is by hitting your G key. You hit your G key, they all kind of show up. So now I have the gizmos for all my objects in here. I can hit the G key again and they go away. So again, just as I showed you with how to import things, there are many ways that you can turn all your key features on and off very quickly. Let's turn this back to a little bit time of day so we're a little brighter in here. So I will pause here for a second. Any further questions?
I have a question about the lights. This is Bethany. If we had a light that was in the Revit model, and if it had IES data in the light family, would it function the same way as these light objects that are added through Twinmotion, like with all of these options that you're showing us, or do they have to be the Twinmotion lights to have all of those options?
Yeah, unfortunately, they will not come over from Revit. So you'll have to add the light features from Twinmotion into those, even though you had an IES light from Revit. So you're going to actually have to add them in Twinmotion, unfortunately. There are some other light objects that are loaded with the product. They're not as precise as these IES lights, but you know, there are street lamps and you know various bollard lights. There's a library full of them. If I go to, oh gosh, like street lights. So you can see there's a variety of different lights here, but they're not accurate lights is what I'm saying. But yeah, to answer your question, no, those lights from Revit do not translate over to Twinmotion.
So they won't produce light at all?
No, they won't.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of the flip side of that. Yeah, don't know how else to explain that.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to get a sense of what the workflow would be as far as like, because the other question I have is once you bring in a Revit model, and let's say we do all of this work in Twinmotion to, you know, modifying materials or adding lights and the other entourage elements, if we needed to update the Revit model and we sort of brought it in again, do we have to redo that work all over again, or does it have any kind of smart ability to kind of...
Right now there's not a good way to kind of update that model that you're manipulating. I know exactly what you're saying, because I spent a lot of time on that animation where I was like building it out and going, oh gosh, I need to add this. And I spent all this time kind of doing materials and all that. I don't want to say that it's a no, but right now I don't see an easy way to do that. I'll research a little bit further, see if I can find a better answer for you. But unfortunately, yeah, it's kind of, you do all your work, and yeah, if you wanted to go back to your Revit model and kind of massage it a little bit, yeah, it's kind of annoying. You have to redo everything else. But that's why I was talking about this feature called See in Twinmotion. This is kind of a great way for you to kind of vet things out before you go full-blown FBX. So this is very handy where you're working back and forth between Twinmotion and the model to kind of get a sense of what you really need to do. And then once you're kind of comfortable and at a good stopping point with your Revit model, then I would export it to the FBX file. So, yeah.
One quick question about See in Twinmotion. Is that an additional plugin that one has to install into Revit, or if you have Twinmotion on your machine, does Revit recognize?
It's part of the Twinmotion plugin. So once you install the plugin, it's included. I'll show you that when we get done here. It's pretty simple. It's pretty slick. One other thing that I wanted to kind of quickly mention is that any one of these assets or objects that you place inside this model, and it doesn't matter what model that you're working on, whatever FBX file you bring in, you can add any one of these assets, whether they're custom or not, and add them to what's called your user library. So you have this custom library that you set up however you want. So I have a variety of materials and objects and videos that I have in my user library, and these are all transferable between different projects. So for instance, if I wanted to grab this chair and I wanted it to be part of my library so that I can use it for all my different projects down the road, I can just click on this chair, and actually I'll click on this chair and hit these three dots. You can say add to library, and it automatically adds that object to your user library. So this is a library that carries over from all your different projects. So you can make your custom library of different objects, make some customized material and add them to your library, and they're all transferable between any one of the projects you bring inside of Twinmotion. So it's very, very handy to have. So you might want to, use this chair in a different Revit model down the road. So, moving around the model, as I talked about earlier, it's, real simple. I mean, I can start walking through this. I'll turn my speed down to 1, which is walking mode. And you can just kind of, walk through this, get a sense of your space. I'm just holding down my arrow key on my keyboard, and I have 1 selected. I'll put 2, you see it speeds up. That's what's called bicycle speed. So you can easily kind of walk through your space and kind of look at what's going on very, very fast. So the walkthroughs in Twinmotion is pretty simple. So let's go outside and work on some of the stuff out here and show you some of the landscaping stuff that we can do. So when I brought this model in, the exterior is pretty generic, pretty raw. These trees here you can see are these what are RCP trees. So they don't come over very well. But what we can do very quickly is transform those into Twinmotion trees. So if I go ahead and just select on one, you can see it's this Italian cypress. Oops. Good grief. So what I want to do is I want to grab all of them. So I'm going to grab all these, and just like anything else, you can just hold your shift and select to select all those trees. So I'm going to select all those, and I want to replace them. So I'm going to go ahead and replace those objects. So I go to my user library and pick on some trees. I'm going to replace them with maybe this Lombardy. And so now they're selected, I go ahead and replace. So it's pretty simple. So you can see that they're pretty big. So I can change the age of those and bring those down to something that's a little bit more reasonable. And those look a whole lot nicer now. They're not the funky little RCP trees. So now they actually have leaves on them. And you can see that if I had a little bit of wind, you can see them kind of fluttering there in the wind. So it's a much more realistic kind of looking tree inside my scene here. Some of the other tools that I have, so let me manipulate over to this planter bed and get in a little closer. So oftentimes, I can drag and drop, trees into my scene like this. Pretty simple. I can just do one by one, or I can grab a whole bunch and kind of place them in there. One of the things that we can do is kind of what's called a vegetation scatter. So if I go to here and go to vegetation scatter, I'm going to grab some vegetation. I grab this ling heather. So I'm going to put that into my drop area here. I'm going to select it and I'm going to paint. I'm going to paint this object here. You can see how quickly that painted that object. You can see that it bled over a little bit just because of the kind of the scale of that object. But I can go in here and erase that. So let me change my eraser down a little bit smaller, something like that. Now I can just kind of hover over this and kind of clean that up. But the idea here is you can, I can quickly kind of build out this flower bed very quickly by doing that vegetation scatter. So it's pretty simple, pretty fast. One thing I truly don't like about this ground here is that it's not very pleasing to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and change that as well. So I'm going to, again, use my material picker, pick that material by default for whatever reason, put in this funky little ground here, but I'm going to put a ground covering, some grass. So that feels a whole lot better now. So it was that easy for me to just kind of change that grass. Again, just like any other material, I can change its scale and such. I'll just kind of leave it the way it is for now. If I go back to dropping in some more trees here, I can just kind of drag and drop. And every time I drag an instant, just like people, it's slightly different. This tree is slightly different than this one. And again, one of the things that we can do here is kind of change its age. Maybe it's a very immature tree, something like that.
Question for you. I know in 3ds Max, when you're placing trees through that program, it has an option of like a minimum maximum age. So not only are you getting variation in the style, but you're also getting variation in height. Is there something like that here?
I don't know if it's random. I can show you, in fact, it's a good segue into the next thing is I can paint my kind of forestation of my site here. And just like people, it's random. It's not, the trees are not all uniform. So kind of the answer your question is, yeah, it does kind of randomly place trees at various stages of growth and, size and, things of that nature. So in fact, let me show you that very quickly. So if I go to this vegetation paint, so I'm going to grab, a bunch of trees, different kinds of trees here. Just put them into my library.
Are you dragging and dropping, or are you click selecting?
I'm dragging and dropping. Yeah,
okay,
exactly. I'm just dragging. I'm just putting them into my dock here. So now what I want to do is I want to paint. So when I get my paint brush, you kind of see it here, and it kind of selected all the trees. But I'm going to make my bubble a little bit bigger. Let me zoom out a little bit further. So now, make that even a little bit bigger. So now if I just paint in here, it's just kind of randomly placing all these different kinds of tree types that I've selected. I'm not having to manually select and pick what trees are going where. It's doing it for me. So it's, pretty cool, pretty easy. I mean, rather than me dragging and dropping individual trees and, like you say, changing its size, You know, maybe I put another one here and change its size. It's kind of randomly doing it on its own here. So, you know, I can, again, it's just a nice quick tool for me to kind of add texture to this scene very, very quickly.
Looks like when you painted, that all shows up as one object.
Yes, yeah, because it's this painted object. So it's good and bad. It's good and bad, and because it segregates out, you know, these individual ones. But yeah, once I delete them, they're all gone, right?
Okay.
Can you adjust the constraints on the randomness?
I don't think so. No, it's just kind of its own internal engine and how it's kind of randomly placing those kinds of things out there. So, yeah.
Can you save the, like where you put them down in the tray, like where you set up like the collection of different ones that you wanted it to randomly place around? Can you save that? So if you wanted to do the same collection again later?
No, other than just clicking on it here, and there's my selection, there's my tree set. And then I can start painting again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But if you deleted it, it would be gone.
Yeah, but I can come in here in this selection set. Let's see here. Hang on a second. Let me select this, and I can delete this tree from the selection set so that when I do an erase, you know, or not. Let me take that back. I can remove that tree from the whole selection set. So you can see now as I'm selecting these, they're removing from my painted selection set. And then I can go ahead and add, you know, something back in, something different, and then you can see that it's adding them back in again. So you do have control, you know, as long as that painted selection set is still here, you still have control over it here by removing certain trees and replacing them with others. Because every time I select that object, this, you know, this painted tree object, it's going to give me what that selection set was. So you do have control over it.
Okay, thanks.
And again, just like anything else that's in your scene graph, you know, I can turn them off or turn them on. So again, just like layers, object styles, you can control them. As I talked about earlier, some of the things I don't particularly care about this, I want to kind of merge this into something that's a little bit more conducive to this site here. So let me go back to my library and let's change the landscape to a flat grassy plain rather than this default brick. And as that kind of loads in here, you can see it'll kind of look a little bit better because it'll get rid of this kind of brownish gray. So now it feels a little bit better. Now I'm kind of in the wilderness a little bit, although now I would like to change my background because it's the cityscape. So I can change that by going into my background, and by default you're loaded with, you know, various types here. You know, so I'm gonna select this mountain. So now I have in context a site that's, you know, a little bit more in context with what I want it to be, some mountains and a grassy plain area. And also, let me go back, you can geographically pick location anywhere in the world. You know, if you wanted to be, you know, more or less, I'm out in California area, you can select that as sort of your geographical location, and it'll reflect its more accurate, you know, sun, time, and setting, and so forth. So you can select your geographical location. Some of the other things we can do here is, I wanted to show you that decal feature, which is kind of interesting. Let me zoom in a little closer. So, you know, we talked about having that sort feature. Let me go back to decals. And let's put in this zebra crossing. I don't know. And its size. I don't know. Something like that. And then let's also grab oh, where are that? One of these puddles, maybe this puddle here. And you can see as I'm dragging this puddle onto my scene here, I really want that puddle to be on top, right? So I'm gonna move it sort order up. So now it's sitting on top of that, on top of the painted stripes here. And one of the interesting features about these, even these decals, is that if I were to change the weather here, and let's change the weather to a rainy day. You can see, I don't know, hopefully you can see on your screen, there's rain coming down. You can see that the material for this asphalt is what's called weathers on. So it's showing kind of puddling. So if I were to select this asphalt and, oh, sorry, let me select the asphalt and I turn weather off, you can see that it doesn't show the puddling of the water on the ground here. But what I wanted to show you is that even this puddle that I placed inside of the model, you can see it showing the raindrops hitting it. So it's relatively realistic. So I put that decal on top of this asphalt and this walk stripe, and it's still showing the weathering of the puddle of the raindrops falling on it. So very cool stuff. And so again, I can select that asphalt. Let's see if I can get out and turn the weather back on. And now it kind of shows the water ponding and puddling on top of the asphalt surface there. So very cool stuff. Back to weather, and then let's turn this on. So that's a good segue into how you can change the weather here. So I can go from kind of a sunny day, no clouds, to a kind of a cloudy day. And then it gets a little more darker, and then, you know, full on rainy day. Similarly, I can, let's go over to the trees. This makes a little more sense when you can see the trees. I can also change the seasons here. So I can go from summer, and I can start to gradually get into fall. You can see the colors on the trees change and get deeper into the season. And then I get into winter. And now there's snow on the ground, and the trees have lost their leaves if they're the types of their trees. And then as I change the weather, it goes from, well, since it's winter, the rain's going to turn to snow. And what's kind of cool about this is that even though I got kind of snow falling here, there's some effects here that I can add. I can add this smog. So I add smog, now it really starts to look like a blizzard. So by turning up that smog, you can kind of see that the background kind of gets faded out a little bit. You can kind of see the snowflakes falling. So a lot of very interesting effects that you can add to your model very, very easily and very quickly. Let me bring this back to a happy summertime.
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
Just to kind of touch back on placing vegetation and all the various effects that can be achieved with the vegetation that you place. We'll be working with some landscape architecture clients, and they have very specific needs as far as species.
Yep.
And so obviously I'm sure we can import custom species models, whatnot, but to what extent will they be able to receive those type of effects and respond to wind? And
they should respond exactly as these are, as long as they were brought in basically as an FBX file. Then you can add those assets just like I did to my custom library. So once you import that object, and you can bring in trees from, I forget the name of the resource, but it's, I forget, I can get that for you if you need it. But there are resources that you can bring in a whole bunch of different kinds of objects, and trees is one of them. And you can just bring them in as an FBX into the scene here. And then I can save them off as my own individual assets and objects, and they should behave just like this, just like these.
Okay, and are there any file parameters or special data settings we have to make sure we have set up for our own custom tree models that we might build and import if we can't find any of the species on the libraries?
I can send you a list of file types if that's helpful.
Sure.
If there are certain things that you're doing outside of, Revit, if it's Maya or 3D Studio Max. I mean, typically the foundation is an FBX file, but there are other formats you can import. But I can get you that list of file formats, no problem.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So, quick question. With the weather and the wind, can that affect fabrics and the trees and do the leaves blow in the wind and stuff?
Oh yeah. In fact, while I'm there, I can kind of show you. Flags. Put this beast here. You can see it's kind of waffling in the wind there. And so let me show you how that affects things. So if I go to weather effects and wind speed, I turn that wind speed way up, maybe change its direction. Yeah, absolutely. And then now you can see with the wind speed, with these leaves. Oops.
It's impressive.
I can bring that wind speed to 0 and they don't move. Are very, very light. Just kind of waffling in the wind. Or very busy. So yeah, the leaves, these flags, absolutely all are affected by these various effects. Smog, obviously if you have water features, there are things within water that we can do. Show the wind will affect how the water ripples across the water there. So yeah, absolutely. So let me show you a couple other quick fun things that we can do in here. One of the things that's kind of fun is what are called character paths or vehicle paths. So if I add a character path, I'm going to just add something just randomly here of some characters just kind of walking to or from the building. So there's my character path. And you can kind of start seeing people kind of walking here. But maybe I'll change its density up a little bit more. And then change its width. And maybe
Fantastic.
What I can do here is maybe I'll be down here. Whoop, whoa. And you can kind of see people very happy because they're leaving work. I can reverse that. Maybe they're going into work now. They're sad. Yeah, we can certainly, add these character paths. Like I said, these are all animatable, if that's a word, so that in your animation, as these people are walking in and out, you can show egress of certain buildings, exit paths. You can show all that kind of fun stuff using these character paths. You can use custom paths. You can animate, I don't know, there are the vehicle paths here as well. Oh, sorry. There's bike path, and then there's these custom paths. You can add your own kind of funky things if you want to animate certain things, but vehicle paths, as you saw in the animation, as cars are coming and going. So very, very, very fun kind of stuff that you can do here. Very quickly, one of the nice features about Twinmotion is, just sort of like websites, you can bookmark things or scenes inside of your model here. So let me go back to that billiards table, for instance. So I'm going to go back here, hit my F key. So I'm back to this billiards table kind of location where I was building stuff out. If this was something that I wanted to bookmark as, placeholder, where I want to keep going back to for whatever reason, it's something that's important to me. I can go back, I can come to my media command here and go to image and save that as an image. Not only is this an image where this is what I can render, but this is basically a bookmark. So if I'm kind of back out here and fussing with other things, let me get out of media mode, and I'm doing other things outside, I can always go to this scene very quickly. So it acts like a bookmark, but it's also an image that you can use when you're ready to go out and export this image as a still. Okay, so very, very easy for you to kind of bookmark certain areas within your model. Rather than trying to get, I use this billiards table as sort of my point of reference inside the model I can easily navigate to, but you can also save it as as I just showed you, an image, and save a variety of these bookmarks so that you can navigate your model very, very, very quickly. With that said, so, you know, I can create animations very easily as well. So, I mean, it's really quite simple. So if I'm essentially maybe down here looking at the building, and I want to go to my video, I'm going to create a video. So this is actually my first keyframe. So I'm going to kind of navigate maybe over here, and another keyframe, and then my third keyframe, I'm going to look up here. Something like that, I don't know, and then add my third keyframe. So now I've created an animation, so it's that fast. And you know, granted, this is pretty simplistic, but you can see, I mean, it's so fast for me to create something to share with a client, customer. I mean, I can easily create these images like I did as bookmarks, or create a quick animation and export them very, very quickly. The animation that I showed you guys at the beginning of the presentation was like a 2.5-minute video that was fairly well vetted out with a lot of different stuff going on in it. Now I'm just using a laptop. It's not a high-end laptop. It's not a bad laptop. I'll show you the specs in a minute, but that probably took me 30 minutes to render that whole 2.5-minute video that's relatively, you know, vetted out. So very easy for me to kind of create these animations and images very quickly. And one of the other things that I talked about earlier was this concept of presenter mode. Now, I'll show you a finished presenter mode, but basically what a presenter mode gives you is a way to share this information with a client or a customer who doesn't have Twinmotion. So basically what it does is it takes this model, any images or videos that you've produced, packages it into one huge executable file that you can share with a customer now, share it off with them, and now he or she can look at this model as if they had Twinmotion. So I'll show you that in just a minute. But that is a very nice feature, and it's full VR too. So if they have, you know, VR appliances, they can plug them in and use it as if they were, you know, walking through the model through their VR tools. So very, very easy. One last thing, maybe if I can, I mean, I showed you guys in the video. Let me see if I can navigate a little cleaner here. Takes a little bit of fussing, but if I kind of navigate into these leaves here, and let me get on this and go to, oh, by the way, I'll go back to that in a minute. I have some camera settings here, and I showed you earlier that depth of field. So if I turn this on, and I can kind of mess with this a little bit, I can change the depth. If you can now see these leaves in the foreground, they're out of focus, and you know the background is in focus. So there are a lot of nice camera tools here that you have that you can kind of fuss with a little bit. You know, change its aperture, maybe open it up so now everything's in focus. And again, these are all animatable. Again, there's my made-up word. But again, a lot of neat features here. What I wanted to speak about was these images here. You'll notice that as I click on the image, it goes into what's called a medium mode. So what that means is that I can independently manipulate this scene outside of my standard scene graph. So my scene graph is kind of, I'm controlling, you know, its lighting, right? Its time of day or whatever. But if I select this individual image, I can change this independent of my master scene graph. So, you know, I can, I don't know, let me see here. Something that's probably more relevant is kind of maybe change the, gosh, I am. Hang on, what am I doing here? I wanted to losing my mind here a little bit. But my point was is that you can manipulate this image, change its setting, maybe it's time of day, maybe it's had some weather settings, and they are specific to this bookmark image, and it doesn't affect your master scene out here. So that's how you kind of manipulate your videos and kind of change going from night to day or from fall to winter, because you're changing these bookmarks as opposed to your master scene. So again, those are easily manipulatable, and you can kind of fuss with those a little bit. So that basically was kind of a quick overview of how we can use Twinmotion. What I did want to show you very quickly was that presenter file. So let me get out of this. Unless, do you have any other questions before I exit out of this?
Actually, I do have one question. If we wanted to bring in another file, like another FBX of a different building, or if we had a site model that was a separate file, and we wanted to basically put together multiple different files, how can we position them correctly, like in the world or relative to one another?
So it's a tricky question. I know, like, if you're using a bunch of linked Revit files, generally they're kind of superimposed on one another, you know, correctly, right? So that if you bring in that one Revit file, like this file here is two files. It's the site plan with the models as a linked file. So they reference together perfectly inside of Twinmotion. But you can also bring them in independently. So you can bring in the shell of the building as one Revit file, and you can bring in the MEP as a separate Revit file. But you know, depending upon how they were composed in Revit, they should line up with one another once you bring them in as separate FBX files. You can still manipulate them. You can grab that file and move the master file around just as you would any one of these other objects here. So you can grab, you know, the whole model and kind of move it. But, you know, again, you can use this transform and precisely position them however you need to. But, you know.
So it will remember their origins at least, I guess.
Yes, yeah, it will. Once you save this file out, once I save this, everything that I've done is saved. It will remember the locations of all that information. I don't know. For me, the best way is to just do it all in Revit, keep everything kind of synchronized and linked, associated properly, and then bring it in Twinmotion. And it comes in very nicely. Like I say, I did all the manipulation of the building and the site inside of Revit, and then I brought it into Revit. I'm sorry, Twinmotion.
That makes sense. That sounds like the right.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to use this as your way of managing the files. You want to do that in Revit like you normally would, right? That's where everything is referenced properly, and then Twinmotion will bring those in very, very nice. So yeah, no problem there. So let me get out of this and show you a couple other things. I don't know, are we on time, or are we okay for time right now? I'm assuming so. Yes.
Yeah, I believe so. You know.
Okay, let me just show.
People got to drop off, but yeah, keep going.
Okay, I just want to show a couple things here. I promised I'd show you see in Twinmotion and presenter. So this is a presenter file. So it's the same model that we were just looking at, but was packaged as a presenter file. So this isn't overly extensive. So this is a file that you can share with a customer. So if you were the architect and you're working on this model and you put together this presentation, what I did do is I saved a couple images. So you can run through these. You can run these like an animation. So there's image 1, you can see it on your screen. It'll switch to image 2 and so forth. It'll kind of walk you through all the various images that I've created here. And so the nice thing about this, though, is that even though I've embedded these images, and you can have a video embedded here as well, but the nice thing about this is that this is the full breadth of the model that I was working on. So I can start walking around this as if I own this model. So I can start looking through it. I can walk inside of it. You know, I can kind of start looking at certain things inside here. So you can share this model with customers or clients or whomever. Now, granted, they can't change anything about it, and you probably don't want them to, because this is something you're sharing with them to say, here's what we're thinking. What do you think? So you'd have all the materials and everything kind of set up, and they can kind of walk around it and look at it. And like I said before, they can go full VR with this. So this is a nice way of packaging something for a customer or a client, so they can kind of study the models or presentations that you have for them. So again, they can't change anything about the model, but they can look at the various images that are embedded in it. They can walk around this thing and kind of get a good sense of what that model is going to look like.
I have a quick question about that.
Yeah.
Does this run entirely in software, or does the client need certain hardware specs in order to be able to run the file like this?
Well, you know, obviously it's a GPU intensive, not so much CPU intensive. So yeah, they may struggle with a computer that doesn't have much video RAM, but you know, it's not like you're in Twinmotion kind of, you know, massaging the model. You're kind of giving them a standalone file that they can kind of look at. But still, I mean, it's, you know, I'll show you my specs. You can still run this on a relatively weak laptop as well.
Sorry, is there a way to adjust the levels of detail when we export to say maybe we can hit some lower system specs?
Yeah, absolutely. You could change the resolution of how these things are exported as well. Absolutely.
Nice.
Right. There was one thing I didn't show you, but there is a way that the Twinmotion does determine your hardware and sets up Twinmotion environment per your hardware spec. So it kind of is intelligent enough to know to not set things up at if you've got a gaming computer, then it's going to set it at ultra high. But if you have your kind of average laptop, it's going to know that, and it'll set the software up so that it's not totally taxing your machine, and it'll still run it. So there is a setting inside of Twinmotion where you can do that.
And sorry, because it's related. How does that affect file size with these different, you know, resolutions and stuff like that? I mean,
yeah, I think it's you know, it's relative, right? So the higher the resolution, the bigger the file size is going to be, right?
Well, so right, but like so this building if you export that to that full export, you know, what are we looking for in file size? How would that compare to Revit? That kind of stuff. And I don't need an answer right now, but if I could get it later on, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest with you. The presenter files can be heavy. I mean, the executable itself is pretty small, but the actual compact package of this, it's about, oh, sorry, wait a minute, let me go back. I can tell you. I mean, it's about two gigs. It's pretty heavy. It's a heavy file.
Okay. So my thought with that is just, you know, that's not something we're going to want to load onto like Box or BIM 360 or something like that and say, hey, client, go run this from this web location. We're going to want to tell them, okay, download this to a computer, preferably a good one, and then you can run it.
Yeah,
kind of thing, right?
It will suffer if you're trying to run it through a web. Absolutely. But yes, yeah, the preferred workflow is to have them download the file, deliver it however you want to deliver it. Yes, correct. And then they can run it. But if they're going to try to run that through BIM 360 or something, yeah, it will suffer. So I'm being completely honest with you. I don't want to lead you down the path and say, yeah, this is going to work great. Just put it up on 360 and it'll just run flawlessly. But
oh yeah, no, I would expect something like this to be a sizable file size.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing I did promise to show you is that, working with C and Twinmotion. So here's my Revit file. I have, one linked Revit file. So I got the model of the buildings actually linked to the site. So if I was working in my model, kind of still fussing with it a little bit, and I wanted to see what this looked like in Twinmotion, it's very simple. I just click on C in Twinmotion. And it will open up Twinmotion. Open it up in a new project. And here's my welcome screen again. And it'll just take a minute. Come on. So here's my model, for instance. Let me just fly into this very quickly. So this was the model that was just right out of Revit that I'm bringing in very, very quickly, just to kind of look at this. And by default, because of the way I had my settings, it automatically swapped out, you know, these RCP trees, with the Twinmotion trees. But what you can do here is I'm sitting here in Twinmotion, kind of looking at this model. If I go back to Revit, and maybe I do something, I don't know, silly here. I don't know if I can. Oh, I don't know if I can do this. I'm in the wrong model. What I want to show you is that I can manipulate this model, re-export back out to Twinmotion, and it will automatically update that change inside of here without kind of fussing without exporting. I'm automatically directly viewing this model in Twinmotion very quickly. But that's basically how View in Twinmotion works. It's a good way to kind of, as you're working with your Revit model, before you go full export to FBX, this would be a good way of kind of vetting out your model and looking at certain things and making sure everything's kind of lining up the way you want it to. So that's the long and short of, you know, exporting it and seeing it in Twinmotion. It's very, very quick. You know,
because it's a linked model. So you're saying if you move a tree, it'll connect. Okay, cool.
Exactly. I can manipulate this model, re-export back out to Twinmotion, and then it'll immediately show me that change here. And like I said at the beginning, the changes that you do in Twinmotion do not go back to Revit. It's one direction.
Quick question, kind of tangentially about placing trees again. If we were to need specific species for our trees, but we didn't want to get too deep in the nitty-gritty of making the models, can we place RCP trees in Twinmotion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Once you have your whatever specialty trees that you want, you can place them in. Yep.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Hey, Dean. One of the things that I think that regarding content was that there's a new partnership with Quixel.
Yes, correct.
And there is tons of content there, right?
Oh, there's tons of material, material library. In fact, oh shoot, I had a note here, but there's a variety of other sites that you can download. Like for instance, about the trees, there's a library full of trees that you can import. Absolutely. Let me just go back to this PowerPoint very quickly, because I think there are some additional, you know, we kind of walked through this. So, you know, basically it's a very easy product to use, as you saw. As you start touching the command and start playing with it, you're going to see that it's very easy to use. And as you get deeper and deeper into it, you're going to discover on your own the learning of what you're able to do. So it's not, I don't like saying this, but it's not like a 3D Studio Max where it's very intense. I mean, you can produce renderings and animations very quickly, you know, in the same day without intensive training. So very easy to use.
Seems fun too. It's like using The Sims. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's so much fun. I mean, as you start to discover what you can do, and it's like, God, that's kind of cool. I wonder if I can do this. And you start fussing around with it a little bit. But yeah, it's very fun. So here are some kind of system requirements. I'm not going to read them off to you, but you can kind of get a sense of what you would need. I have an NVIDIA card that has 4 gigs of VRAM on it. It's just a laptop. I'm able to do basically everything I need to do on that laptop. It's not a gaming laptop. I don't know if I have my specs here. This is just some other information about some specials that Imagine it's running for purchasing and pricing, so you get free upgrades until 2021. I won't speak to cost. I'll let Matt speak to you about that. But we do offer a one-day fundamental class and custom training as well. And that's basically all I had. So I think it was helpful that it was interactive, so I was able to kind of answer questions as we were getting through things. Was there anything else, Matt, that I needed to share with the group?
Well, so I just want to reiterate that it's a perpetual license, and so if you purchase something, if you purchase Twinmotion, it's a perpetual license. They can't turn it off like the new subscription model that Autodesk has, and you're going to get every update and release through the end of 2021, which is, it's pretty, that's a good amount of time where there's no maintenance or subscription additional cost to stay current. So
yeah, and I know Twinmotion has it at a minimum of 3 point releases a year, and they're constantly updating this product.
Yep. And
do they offer network licensing? Like,
no.
Do we have to buy a seat for each person? Or okay, so there's no way to buy like 5 seats and have it shared between a lot of people.
No, it's a single user license, and each license is a whopping $224. That's not $2,224, but $224. So Bethany, we can, most firms can afford to at least give the power users the ability to use the tool. That's a promotional price through the end of August. But that is it's quite the deal.
It is. And hopefully you can see how easy this is to use and ramp up very, very quickly.
Excuse me, I had another
Great
question.
segue there, Bethany. Great segue.
Oh, sorry about that. I have another question about some of the production aspects of importing files.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I saw when you started out to import the FBX, there was an option for importing landscape. Is the file format any different for landscape than building as far as FBX goes? Can we import GIS info?
As long as it's in an FBX format. Yep.
So it comes in, it all pretty much comes in as an FBX.
Correct.
For the different formats. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. And then can you touch again on changing materials per instance versus over by material types?
Sure.
So
yeah, so if I were to select this whatever object, you can see that it's this whatever this is. There's this command down here, apply to object. So if I wanted to change that material to, I don't know, something else, I can just put it on just that surface, not the whole building, even though it's the same. And it's just a toggle right here. Apply to object as a place the whole object.
Because we're used to by default when we bring in and replace materials, we have to set up the scene in either SketchUp or Revit with the materials predefined, and it's kind of organized that way. And then when we come in and apply it here, it applies the material to all materials or to all objects of that material type. And this lets us kind of get around that.
This is a great way to get around that, because then you can isolate, even though it was applied a specific material, you can isolate that object and say, I want it to be different. And that's the one thing I really, really like about this.
Right. Very nice.
Can you use split surfaces?
I'm not having to go back to Revit or AutoCAD or whatever, SketchUp, and separate out that object so that I can apply a different material to it. I can do it here. I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
can you split surfaces?
I
Or,
can't. I can't
would you have to
physically.
okay.
Yeah, they have to be in Revit. You can, however you want to separate out your model in Revit, do it there, and then obviously bring it in here, and I can kind of massage things as I need. But
Right. Well, that doesn't seem like too big of a hurdle because you can use the View in Twinmotion plugin.
Oh yeah, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just kind of looking at it and going, okay, how does that look? If I do this to it, what's it going to look like? And you'll know right away. Maybe I do need to separate that out for whatever reason. And that's where that's the beauty of doing that thing in Twinmotion. So yeah, absolutely. So Matt, I have no further information. If you
great job.
Continue, we can adjourn. I appreciate everybody participating today. Thank you so much. I know it's getting late in the day for you guys. It's almost 7, I guess.
Yep, that's right.
And thank you so much. And you can always reach out to me at my email. I don't think I gave it to you, but you can get with Matt. And if there are further questions, I can relay them through Matt to answer any further questions you might have.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks, Dean.
Bye.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, guys.
Good night.
I'll talk to y'all later. If you need something, let me know. Have a good
You got
night,
it.
everybody.
Okay.
All right. Take care,
bye.
guys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Whoa. Mayo. Imagine it. So these guys